The female ghost has a horrifying appearance, with a gaunt figure and a face twisted in terror. With just a single ferocious roar, she can shatter the arm of anyone nearby. What makes this even more unsettling is the male lead's intimate encounter with this woman. It turns out she is possessed by a malevolent spirit. Under the spirit's dark influence, the priest, Peter, loses control over his desires, breaking both his vows and professional ethics. The story begins on a late and eerie night during an exorcism ritual. Peter is urgently called to assist with expelling a demon. From the moment he arrives at the door, he senses something sinister in the air. The possessed girl, named Mary, is bound to a bed, but the physical restraints are no match for the demon controlling her. Under its power, Mary transforms into a grotesque figure capable of breaking a person's arm with a mere glance. Her guttural growls seem to summon an eerie influence over others, drawing them in. The doctor present fears that Mary's weakened body won't endure much longer. Peter quickly contacts Father Holt, informing him of the situation. Holt reassures Peter that the church has already approved the exorcism, but he himself won't arrive for another 2 days. Peter, believing Mary doesn't have that long, makes the bold decision to proceed with the ritual immediately. Holt strongly cautions Peter against acting alone, reminding him that he hasn't yet completed basic exorcism training. He warns Peter that if he harbors any unconfessed sins or unresolved guilt, the demon will exploit these weaknesses, putting his life and soul at great risk. Despite understanding the grave danger, Peter can't stand by while Mary suffers. Ignoring Holt's advice, he resolves to perform the exorcism himself. Peter asks Mary's family to leave the room, ensuring he has privacy for the ritual. He prepares to document the entire process, then takes up his cross and begins reciting prayers to banish the demon. Instead of recoiling in fear, the demon mocks Peter, using Mary's body to provoke him. At one point, Mary unbuttons her shirt, forcing Peter to avert his gaze in discomfort. When he sprinkles holy water, the demon laughs as if enjoying the act. Peter remains steadfast, rebuking the demon with his prayers. However, the demon taunts him, whispering seductively, "Come closer, and I'll leave." Undeterred, Peter continues praying until Mary collapses on the bed, seemingly exhausted. Believing the exorcism is complete, Peter approaches cautiously. But as he gets closer, Mary grabs his hand and pulls him in, kissing him. Undeterred, Peter continues praying until the gleeman walks on to reach the exorcism. As he is, during their intimacy, Peter suddenly feels an unnatural sensation. His face pales, and his eyes flash with an otherworldly glow. 18 years pass. Peter has remained in the same town, dedicating his life to helping the children at a local orphanage. Recently, a strange illness has begun afflicting many children in the area, and the hospital is critically low on medicine. Desperate for solutions, the townsfolk turn to Peter and their faith for hope, suspecting it may be connected to the current crisis. Haunted by guilt, Peter decides to confess his sins to the bishop of the Mexican diocese. Retrieving an old tape of the exorcism, he hopes to confront his past. However, the bishop shows little interest in Peter's confession, focusing instead on the good he has done for the town. Thanks to Peter's efforts, humanitarian aid has arrived, offering the sick children a chance at recovery. The townspeople deeply respect Peter for his selflessness, but his inner guilt remains unresolved. Just as Peter begins to find some solace, a sudden scream pierces the night. Rushing outside to investigate, he is horrified to discover that the crucifix of Jesus has vanished. Following a trail of blood, Peter comes upon a man crouched in a corner, sobbing. As Peter cautiously reaches out to touch the man's shoulder, the figure turns, revealing a grotesque, nightmarish face hidden beneath long, dark hair. Startled, Peter reaches up. It was a nightmare. Later, that day, Peter receives a request for assistance from a nearby prison. A guard had been attacked, losing 2 fingers to a prisoner's bite. What makes the situation unusual is that the prisoner, who seems to be possessed, specifically asked to see Peter. Upon arrival, the prison doctor informs Peter that the prisoner is a young girl. Her symptoms resemble epilepsy or schizophrenia. But there's more to her story. She had previously been accused of murder, with the victim's body discovered in a macabre scene. When Peter meets the girl, who is indeed possessed, she speaks in the guttural voice of a demon. Shockingly, she repeats a phrase that the Mexican bishop had said earlier. Then, her voice shifts back to that of a young girl, repeating word for word what Peter had said to the doctors moments before. Stunned, Peter could not comprehend how she could know these things. The demon then taunts Peter, declaring, "We have known each other for a long time." Insulted and unnerved, Peter ends the conversation. However, he suspects that this demon might be linked to the exorcism he performed years ago. The tone and behavior feel eerily familiar. Peter is reluctant to get involved further, but as he prepares to leave, the girl's mother arrives, begging for his help. To his shock, the mother is Mary, the girl he exorcised many years earlier. The prisoner is revealed to be Mary's daughter. That night, Peter finds himself unable to move, paralyzed in his own bed. The door to his room creaks open. Though no one appears to be there, he struggles to turn his head, but sees nothing at the doorway. Then, the bedsheet beside him bulges, as if someone is hiding underneath. Unable to move, Peter closes his eyes and prays. Moments later, his body regains mobility, and the mysterious figure is gone. However, just as he begins to feel safe, unseen hands seize his neck. A man resembling Jesus appears before him, but just as quickly the apparition vanishes and everything returns to normal. Despite receiving funding for the hospital, children continue to die daily, and the doctors are unable to determine the cause of the mysterious illnesses. Feeling helpless, Peter submits an application for an exorcism to the bishop in the Mexican region. The proper protocol requires sending the request to church headquarters for approval, but the bishop, sensing the urgency, encourages Peter to proceed without waiting, promising to handle any repercussions. This time, wary of his previous mistakes, Peter decides to seek assistance. He reaches out to Father Holt, the priest who had once opposed his decision to perform exorcisms alone. That evening, Peter burns the recording he had made during the exorcism years ago, the only evidence of his transgressions. The truth is more horrifying than anyone knows. Mary, during the original exorcism, had fallen into a coma and was not conscious when Peter kissed her. The demon, sensing Peter's impure thoughts, manipulated him into an unspeakable act. It was only after this that Peter managed to expel the demon from Mary. Mary and her family remain unaware of what truly transpired. Peter confides in Holt about the recurring apparitions of the man resembling Jesus. After listening, Holt theorizes that Peter himself might be the true target of the demons. Holt explains that over 2,000 years ago, the demon Babel sought to possess Christ, but failed. Babel is no ordinary demon. It is a high-ranking entity in hell, revered by many of its followers. Recently, demons have been persistently tormenting Peter, and it becomes clear that he is likely a part of their future schemes. Holt specifically warns Peter to ensure his conscience is clear, because even a small mistake could lead to dire consequences. Meanwhile, a nun is performing her bedtime prayers when she suddenly feels blood dripping onto her face. In the blink of an eye, the statue of the Virgin Mary vanishes. Following a trail of blood on the floor, she notices a white cloth nearby. When she unfolds it, she discovers a dead infant wrapped inside. Terrified, the nun stumbles backward, only to sense a presence approaching from behind. Nearby statues begin to weep, tears falling. Turning quickly, she finds no one there. She decides to leave, but as she reaches the door, an unseen force pulls her into the darkness. The commotion awakens the children in the room, and they quickly force the door open. The nun, who had been dragged away, is now possessed by a demon. Her horrifying screams draw the attention of Peter and Holt. As the possessed nun menacingly approaches the children, Mary suddenly appears and manages to restrain the nun. With Mary's intervention and the arrival of Peter and Holt, they managed to drive the demon away. However, Peter notices that the children have developed rashes on their faces. If the cause isn't identified soon, the children might succumb to an unknown affliction. Holt suspects that the children's mysterious illness is connected to the demon, prompting them to visit the prison overnight to investigate. At the prison, they find the possessed girl crying before she suddenly erupts into demonic growls. Peter is tempted to eliminate the demon immediately, but Holden intervenes, mocking the demon and daring it to prove its identity. "If you're truly a demon, prove it," Holt says. "Otherwise, you're not worth our time." He then turns to leave. Enraged, the demon shuts the cell door and spits a thick, foul liquid containing a severed guard's finger at Holt. Undeterred, Holt taunts, "Even if you're a demon, you must be the weakest one." Furious, the demon causes Holt to collapse to his knees in pain, demanding, "Have you forgotten our pact?" As the situation spirals out of control, Peter begins to pray, but the demon remains unaffected until Holt, despite his agony, joins in. Only then does the demon show discomfort. Just when they think they've subdued it, the demon breaks free of its chains, attacking and biting off Holt's ear. With no other option, the doctor suggests using medication to put all the prisoners to sleep as a preventative measure. Holt, however, reminds Peter not to trust Babel, the cunning demon they're dealing with. Babel thrives on manipulating fears and must never be bargained with. While the prison doctor, accompanied by a guard, injects sedatives into the inmates, they fail to notice one prisoner stealing the cell keys. Meanwhile, Peter realizes the holy water Holt has prepared is no ordinary kind. Traditional rituals are ineffective against Babel. That evening, Peter and Mary share a heartfelt conversation about their daughter. Peter apologizes for his past actions, but Mary reassures him, saying their daughter is a gift from God. Peter, who has carried years of guilt, admits he fell in love with Mary long ago. The two embrace, tears streaming down their faces, and the prison warden finalizes evacuation plans. The doctor chooses to stay behind to assist. Suddenly, the prison plunges into darkness. When the doctor investigates, he discovers that every cell door is now open. At the same time, Peter and Holt realize the possessed girl is missing. Strange noises echo above them, but when Peter looks to the ceiling, there is nothing there. They allow themselves a brief moment of relief, only to feel the tension rise again. As the cell door suddenly slams shut, Peter and Holt find themselves trapped inside. Meanwhile, the doctor discovers that all the prisoners in the adjacent cells have vanished. The only remaining prison guard has been savagely killed. In the distance, the faint sound of a woman crying echoes. The doctor cautiously approaches to investigate, only to realize that something is clearly off about her behavior. He prepares to administer another sedative when a ferocious individual charges at him from behind. The doctor is attacked and falls to the ground. At the same time, the door to Peter's cell swings open, almost as if the demon deliberately intends to isolate them and deal with them one by one. Shortly after, the doctor drags himself out of the darkness, using the last of his strength to warn Peter to leave immediately. Behind him, 3 individuals possessed by demons appear, including the woman who had assaulted him earlier. Holt manages to subdue the 3 demons, but Peter's attempts are futile. The demons even mock him for his ineffectiveness. Then, a statue-like demon emerges. With a subtle flick of its finger, the cross in Holt's hand heats up, burning him. Holt retrieves a larger cross in an attempt to confront the demon. However, at that moment, the woman who attacked the doctor charges at them again. The doctor reappears, mustering his last ounce of strength to push the woman away, buying Peter and Holt a brief moment to escape. Sadly, the doctor succumbs to the demon's attack. Desperately fleeing, Peter and Holt find themselves cornered as the demon takes control of Holt, forcing him to stab himself. The prisoners in the facility grow increasingly agitated, leaving Peter and Holt with no choice but to take refuge in the kitchen. Once there, Holt angrily confronts Peter, demanding to know what he has been hiding. He points out that Peter's prayers have no effect on the demon, which implies unconfessed sins. Under pressure, Peter admits the truth about the exorcism ritual they had performed years ago, revealing the grave mistakes he made. Holt is furious, resenting Peter for not confessing earlier, as their failure to stand against the demon was now inevitable. It turns out that Holt also has a dark secret. Years ago, he made a pact with the demon to save lives, agreeing that his soul would belong to it upon his death. Now aware of his impending end, Holt warns Peter one final time. He cautions him that Babel will exploit his weaknesses and tempt him into sin. He emphasizes that one cannot serve both God and the devil simultaneously. After delivering his warning, Holt prepares himself for his fate. Meanwhile, the demon begins breaking through the kitchen door. Left with no other choice, Peter escapes on his own. Peter knows that the first step to overcoming the demon is confessing his sins and seeking repentance. Since the video footage of the exorcism from 18 years ago has already been destroyed, he decides to record a confession on his phone. In the video, Peter admits to violating the possessed individual during the exorcism, acknowledging that, although the demon influenced him, the root of the act lay in his own sinful desires. Peter sends the video to the bishop, hoping to validate the sincerity of his repentance. To test whether his repentance was accepted, Peter opens the door and faces the demon head-on. The possessed individual charges at him, but Peter swiftly holds up a cross, causing the demon to writhe in agony. He realizes that God's protection has returned. Just as he begins to regain confidence, the possessed individual reappears, lunging at him. However, Peter raises the cross again, forcing the demon to retreat. Peter intends to exorcise the demon completely, but before he can finish, a figure strikes him from behind, rendering him unconscious. When Peter regains consciousness, he finds himself tied to a chair, the same one he and Holt had prepared earlier. The demon has surrounded him with numerous candles. To his horror, Peter's daughter presses an inverted cross to his forehead, her intention clear: to drive out the presence of God from within Peter. To advance their plans, the devil aimed to turn the entire world into hell. During the confrontation, blood was sprinkled onto Peter, causing an intense, burning pain, reminiscent of the holy water used by priests during exorcisms. At the same time, the nun suddenly regained consciousness, only to find the children's condition deteriorating rapidly. She tried to leave the building for help, but the doors refused to budge. Then, the statue-like demon reappeared. Meanwhile, in the prison, the demons were forcefully expelling God's presence, preaching back to the style the Matter Lord, for with his possessing, Peter's daughter remained standing. Destroying the demons were forcefully expelling God's presence, remained standing. Peter understood now. He was under God's protection, while Babel drew strength from hell. The demon declared that either the children, including Peter's daughter, would perish, or Peter must expel God's presence from his body immediately. Fully aware of the consequences, Peter agreed to the demon's terms. The contract was sealed, and Babel immediately departed from his daughter's body. Miraculously, the critically ill children in the hospital recovered, and Peter successfully saved his daughter. At dawn, Peter was hailed as a hero. Mary expressed her deep gratitude, and Peter's actions attracted the attention of international media. Among believers, he was revered as a saint.